Let 'Em Go Barefoot is a podcast that dives into all things parenting and education through the lens of mindful awareness. Conversations aim to bring forward patterns, beliefs, and attitudes that shape our expectations and ideas about what it means to raise healthy children. With a blend of science, ancient wisdom, and intuition, we will explore ways to support, nurture, and connect with our growing children while also nurturing and expanding ourselves. I am grateful you are here. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Let 'Em Go Barefoot podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Kirsten Cobabe, who is on Instagram as her namesake and also as the Teen and Parent Whisperer. I asked Kirsten to come on because I love the things she's posting about teens, and I just really feel like they're an underrepresented group and sometimes misunderstood. And it would be wonderful to have a conversation with her because this is her work and this is what she does day in and day out. So welcome, Kirsten. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, let's dig in because you have some great posts, great reels, and I'm going to start with this one. It isn't teens who create conflict. It's our lack of understanding of teens that creates conflict. How did you get to that point in your journey?
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I've been working with teens since actually I was a elder teen myself, mentoring their parents, and it's been obvious to me since I was since forever that children in general can be often misunderstood, and teens especially. We aren't necessarily taught proper and true stages of development in school or in life, even especially now that we're not in community together, right? And so I think there's been this big gap, and we're seeing it. We can't deny how much teens and tweens are struggling right now, and their parents. And there is this lens because of the way we were parented that we sort of need to. That maybe our parents were right, that we need to follow suit. Some people do a big reaction and do full opposite permissive parenting. And really, what's so empowering is understanding what's actually happening now, and this can create connection instead of conflict. We know it's easy to be in conflict with teens. They're saying no, there's attitude, they might be leaving the house or taking the car or lying. This is often part of the stage, not always, but if we understand maybe what's underneath it all, why is this happening, then we can actually engage in it. I mean, I'm 20 plus years deep. I have so many beautiful relationships with teens and their parents. The bridges are absolutely possible. We can build bridges instead of barriers. And it's a difference between thinking the eye roll is disrespect and realizing that the eye roll is budding autonomy, a need for to be heard and seen and witnessed, a need for dialogue.
And I love that reframe too, because it's like when somebody sees something that hits them as maybe disrespectful or rude, there's a need to defend or to address it right then and there, almost like creating a little fight or conflict and just continuing on with that sort of trajectory. But instead, maybe take a pause and go, okay, the eye roll is a symptom or a signal
Yep.
of something else. So how would you explain to parents a way to address it that does create a bridge instead of a barrier?
Curiosity first and foremost. Of course, reparenting, which is kind of a newer term, I think, and new for some people. The work I do really incorporates this idea of care, and curiosity is the first letter there. That's what the C stands for. And then we move into awareness and reflection and enjoying. And so with curiosity, this is instead of being furious, you're curious, right? Instead of maybe mimicking and modeling and perpetuating what so many of us received as teens, and we know what that feels like to feel misunderstood and alone as humans, and often as teens. And so we don't even know what we're dealing with unless we can be curious and slow down. And our culture, at least in the States, really encourages and even glorifies thriving instead of arriving. And so if we can really stop and pause. Anytime we get triggered, there's a treasure there. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's like, oh, la, 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 no problems, I got this. I mean, sometimes especially with practice, it'll become more exciting even because it's like, oh, I get to connect with my kid right now. And in the end of this life, what really does matter? Like when we look back,
Mhm.
these are the moments that we can make truly magical from what's muddy and messy. And so it doesn't mean we're going to do it perfect every time. It's not about that. And yeah, how can we just be curious? Wait, my kid just eye rolled. I wonder if they're hungry. I wonder if they're dysregulated. I wonder if someone said something mean to them today. Did they get a bad grade? Are they struggling somewhere?
Yeah.
What is that? And even if none of that's happening, what if that's their autonomy, you know, coming through just like with a toddler, just a bigger version of it when they kind of throw themselves on the ground or say no. Teens have a version of that too. They're going through a massive expansion in their brain and with their emotions. And it's often misunderstood and totally underutilized, truly, because we can kind of lean into it.
So all of that is so important, and I'm taking notes as you're writing because I don't want to miss it because you said care. So can you elaborate on that a little bit more? So this is an acronym that you created, or it's talk
Yes.
to us about that. Okay.
Yes, yes. So, there's a few acronyms out there. They're all lovely. This one really feels complete for the work that I do because just like teens, the word care can be even misunderstood. Like I'm doing
Mm.
this just because I care about you. And sometimes it can be this justification for a parent's quote bad behavior. And
Right.
and really true care is being present with the moment. So being curious, what's happening here? Being aware of our own internal stuff and our teenagers' stage of development and their personality and the dynamic. So lots of awareness there. And we can't get, we kind of have to have both of those things going. You can start with awareness or curiosity, but curiosity is a great doorway. And then
Mhm.
reflection. Wait, what about this is mine? Am I doing what my dad did or what my mom did that I remember didn't feel good? And it doesn't mean everything that doesn't feel good we shouldn't do. Sometimes you're going to have to say no to your teen for safety and they're not going to
Mhm.
like it. And that's okay. It's not about just like do whatever you want, kid. It's about really, really anchoring, fostering, cultivating a deep rapport, deep relationship that can make it through anything, which that's what leads us to
Mhm.
enjoying this process. It's fleeting. These are the last moments before they're officially young adults in the world. And so if you still want to be influential, these are the tools to get there. This is the pathway.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier about possibly doing the opposite of maybe what you experienced as a kid. So if you grew up under a very authoritarian type family dynamic, you may have a tendency to go the opposite, which is to be extremely passive. Like you don't want to have any rules or any boundaries because it felt so unfair to you as a kid. And then it's like the opposite happens. So can you talk to us about why that would be a negative or a potentially uncomfortable way to raise your children and to create an environment for your children that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally experienced so much freedom as a child, um, to a degree, like to degrees that sometimes didn't feel safe. And so if we look
Mm,
at that, and many of us have felt that too. Some people even had that with strict, parameters as well. If they had two very different parents or were in different homes, there's sometimes a blend. And so if I look at it like water, if water is just free to go anywhere, that can be a flood,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
Especially in torrential downpour teen years of like so much transformation in the brain and in hormones, moving, growing, shifting, right? There's so much happening when we really lean into that. And for anyone looking, there's plenty of resources to understand Erik Erikson's stages of development, for example. These are
Hmm.
kind of what I went to school and studied and personally in my life as well. But yeah, I think of it as water. So that could be a flood. If you're a riverbed, then that water gets to be channeled, held,
Mm,
or a pool if you're more into that sort of metaphor. But being the earth, the edges allows that water to feel safe and kind of channeled, and you can um, kind of wiggle and expand with the water, listen to the water if the water is the teen,
hmm.
right, or the emotions. And so if it's too contained, maybe that's the pool, right? It can't go
Hmm.
anywhere. If it's a river going, heading down into a mountain, then it makes its way to like, its final destination and can blossom. And so the middle path is what we want often in life, not one or the other. And we're such a world of extremes, especially right now, right and wrong, black and white. And teens can often have a black and white way of looking at the world. And so to invite nuance and to walk a middle path allows us to see things from different perspectives and to
Hmm.
really understand what your teen might be going through. And
Right.
so that's the way I look at that.
I love that explanation. It really allows a visual, and it gives you like a framework to consider. I took a nonviolent workshop. I participated in a nonviolent communication workshop years ago. So my son is now 21, and he was a little guy. And I'll never forget this story that was shared by the guy who was leading this group, and he talked about this family who was using nonviolent communication and with a teen, and the teen was being asked, they were like speaking back to him, like, what I see is this and what I notice is this. And the teen finally said, can y'all just stop and be just straight with me right now?
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And we all laughed because we all know exactly what they're talking about. Like sometimes there's a level of like too much space to
Yeah.
talk and do. And you're like, sometimes they just want you to be straight up. Like, just stop with all the emotions and, how do you feel and checking in. And I'm not saying this is not important because anybody who knows me knows that I feel that way, but it can get a little overboard, I think,
Yeah.
sometimes. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to say, so can you speak to that at all? Like maybe where there could be kind of a barrier or a boundary for the parent of saying, I want to hear you out. I want to have this conversation with you. We need to communicate about this particular situation. But at the same time, there is maybe a space where there is just a flat out, we're not doing that anymore, or this is not going to happen, or this is not going to be allowed, or, like how do you use that? Like what's a good terminology to use in
Mm.
order to set those boundaries for the water to flow in a way that's safe and helpful?
A few things come to mind. One, I play with another acronym and I don't have it completely down yet, but real, right? Teens want real. That's why they
Mm,
like hanging out with their friends. They're not being lectured about their homework.
mm-hmm.
They're just hanging out. It's chill. And so real and authentic is so key because otherwise your teens can be like, stop therapizing me. Like, where'd you get these
Yes.
words from your therapist? And they know what's going on. They know everything. I mean, in terms of this, right? Many things they don't know yet, hence why mentors and leaders, safe and sound guides are so key. But it's unsteady ground. And so sometimes teens are pushing to see if you can hold that line,
Mm,
right? Like, am I safe here to have all my big emotions? Are they going to keep me safe as I'm becoming flooding, right? And so it's not about yeah, it's definitely not about saying yes to everything. And the other thing that comes up is it's about being real. And then the other piece is we got to practice with ourselves because a
right.
lot of us had to step away from our true selves to get through school, to fit in, to appease our parents. Some people are still in that mode, hence why parenting the way one truly wants can be hard if you're still the quote child in your parents' eye or you still want to make your parents proud.
Mm, mhm.
Right? It's like how to balance it all, and this can be quite tricky, and so that's where the reflection piece can really come in. Am I being real? Who am I putting first here? Uh, what are my family values? Right? Because with one family, curfews might not be a thing. In another family, it might be like, we have curfews. And it's for a very
Mhm.
good reason, depending on where you live or certain dynamics or certain needs of that child. And so I wish there was this like perfect answer. And it's about getting really clear. What's important to me, my family? What does my child need, first of all, to stay safe? Because without that, we've got nothing. How can
Mhm.
I continue to cultivate true connection here without, yeah, going overboard or having it be fake? Right? Some teens
Yeah.
that the best moments are like 5 minutes in a car together going somewhere, or skipping a day of school together, or when they're having a bad day, hearing them out. Like that can be the best moment of their day.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think they really, and I have, like I said, a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old. So I've got the teen years with one pretty through that, but also it wasn't for me, it wasn't through. Like I enjoyed it and still do so much because
Oh,
they're so much fun. They're just, to see the world through their eyes, to hear how they're interpreting things and the things that they take into consideration and the way they process it through their own experiences and then kind of come out with this idea. It's so fascinating to me and I love it a lot. And what I have taken from our experiences is that they love it when we're honest with them.
yeah.
They just like, you're a human too, mom. You have
Yeah.
feelings, you have reasons for doing what you do, and it's okay to let them know. And it's not about turning them into like your confidant or a friend in the way that you would maybe give them too much information about things. Like we don't want to flood them with our emotions, but
Right.
it's that I'm having a hard time right now because of this, or I see this situation this way, and here's what I'm thinking it could turn into, and this
Yes.
is why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. So I
Yes.
think going back with that curiosity for yourself and also expressing that to the kids so they can hear your process and hear how you're working through something that's challenging or confusing, or you're sorting through your emotions related to a particular situation, because that
Yeah, these
teaches that mentoring, right? Like I'm teaching you how I'm processing my own emotions and feelings about all this.
mm, yeah, and you brought it back to kind of some of the words that might be chosen in these moments, and I think those are spot on. Like, yeah, can I go to this party tonight? It's like, oh, instead of no way, why would you even ask? Or like, well, who's, complete like immediate fear mode, which
Mhm.
is easy to do, let's be honest, right? In
Yep.
today's world, it's about like, oh, okay, I need a second, or like, can you share more info? Or, ooh, tell me more, right? And
Mhm.
then, yeah, if for some reason something is hard about it, being honest, like they can handle it, of course, within reason and age appropriate. But yeah, absolutely. Oh, I need a second to think about that. Can we talk about it over dinner? Or like, yeah, let's explore this. Let's see what it's all about, right?
Mhm.
Um, and all this is possible when your relationship is solid, right? It's like
Yeah.
in a solid relationship, you can talk about anything. And at the same time, the path to that solid relationship is talking about anything.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you have to do it in order to get better at it.
Totally. And when you mess up, it's like, oh, shoot, I freaked out
Yeah.
earlier. That was my bad. That's on me. Is a
Yeah.
beautiful way to repair and continue these conversations, because that's going to happen. And that just models that that's human. It's not an
Mhm.
excuse, it's accountability. And we can model this for teens in hopes that they too will pick that up along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole mentoring is just it's a daily exercise, and we're
Yes.
learning all the time too, and we're learning from them, and they're bouncing ideas off of us and we're bouncing ideas off of them. So yeah, it's such a back and forth relationship, and it really can be a beautiful experience in time, and it is such a great adventure. And there's something that I'm trying to remember it correctly, if it was John Taylor Gatto that said something about the teen years being, not only just full of adventure, but it's about novelty and
Mm,
learning who you are. And like you said earlier, testing kind of those boundaries and seeing where am I safe, where am I not. And it is I I have seen over the years how often it's talked about in such a negative way. And I just would love nothing more than to flip it around and see it as the positive time that it is, because they literally are about to fly just
I know.
completely in a way that you want to be able to say and watch it and look at it in awe and say, oh my gosh, I had this awesome time with this human being, and now they're good, and I was a part of that.
Yeah.
So
And
what better
yeah.
way to do that than to create this communication, this open um, understanding that you are on their team,
Hmm.
forever and ever.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, and to hopefully be able to still be a part of it. My friend, Erin Morrison, she shared something recently that really stuck with me. It was be the parent your kid doesn't need to call but wants to call.
Mm,
Isn't that
mm,
so beautiful? It's just like, and because then that door is just open, is what it feels like to me. And that they don't, quote, need you, but they want you to be in their life. And this doesn't mean you're
hmm.
folding over, being permissive, whatever along the way, because that's not any healthy relationship.
No,
Right. And so,
Mm-mm.
and like you said, it can be so beautiful amidst the turmoil and the stormy seas and the just transformation that occurs in the brain alone. If we can be okay with a little bit of the mystery and the ride, of course, we all like to know what's going to happen next. That just feels
Yeah.
good. That feels good for us, right? And guess what? We
Right.
actually can know what's going to happen next if we understand the stages of childhood development. And so that you might not know
Mhm.
exactly every detail, but it's like, oh, expect them to say no, expect them to quote, talk back. There's stability in that. And there's a way to anticipate how I might deal with that. Because most people, when they become a parent, a lot of people have never even hung out with a kid or been up all night with a baby or have studied this stuff. And so this isn't to blame. This is just the reality of our culture and the busyness. And so a lot of it comes as a surprise. And then it's like,
Mhm.
and I'm supposed to know this. And why don't I know this? And, all of this stuff can come up and feel so heavy. But more than anything, teens want their parents to not be perfect, but to kind of have their shit together in a way that
Yeah.
allows space for grace, and for teens to grow at their own pace, and really understanding sometimes the space that they need. And there's this layer too of trusting in nature, which I know
Mm.
speaks to you, or I would imagine would, right? It's like barefoot
Mhm.
on the ground is how it's done where I live as much as possible.
Yep.
And trusting that there's a natural progression here and nature is by your side. And the closer we are to nature, things make sense. And there are metaphors in
Yeah.
nature for growth and growing and seasons.
Yeah. For sure. Oh my goodness, yes. Well, let's talk about where you live and how things kind of roll there in beautiful Maui. So before we jump into that though, we kind of skipped over, your story as far as like how you got into this work. So do you want to give us a little taste of how you got into doing what you're doing and also how you landed in Maui?
Happy to, yeah. Um, I was fortunate enough to be born on a farm and grow up in a lot of nature, and it, I think, still saves me to this day. And I know it really
Mm.
did to some degree as a child. And so from a really young age, I've been interested in excuse me, in family dynamics and relational dynamics. And I was a pretty sensitive particular kid and an artist, and just had a very vivid dream world and deep connection to nature and animals, and it was just wonderful. At the same time, I had, two parents that sort of had a lot going on. I was given a lot of freedom. It became a bit, in my opinion, felt neglectful, and sort of had to find my own way a little too much at times. And
Mm.
so that really, when I think back to it, the moments that I had where there was this guidance from a sound, safe, steady person, whether it was the moments with my parents that were like that, or some great teachers that I had and mentors, those I've really hung on to those. And it's amazing what us humans can hang on to get through. It doesn't have to be perfect, and that's sort of the downfall of the current, the current kind of parenting, like perfectly sort of pressure. Um, no, it doesn't need to be perfect, because so much beauty came from the struggles I had, and more than anything, the support through them. Because the ACEs test shows us this, right? If we have enough support during hard times, we can make it through. At the
Mhm.
same time, I know that some of what I went through did not have to happen, and whether that's unhealthy relationships, or not talking to my parents for long periods of time, or just feeling really unsafe and scared and not knowing who to talk to. There's so um, there's so many opportunities to be with someone when they're going through these shifts and changes and evolutions, and that's so needed, and truly what humans, I think, can thrive, and then of course arrive together in. So my
Mhm.
background is really natureful. I've always worked with children. I've just had a natural rapport with children. I've even had Reiki sessions and healing sessions where people will say there's children all around you. I had to ask permission to come work with your
Oh.
energy. Yeah. Um,
Oh.
yeah,
Wow.
it's been my work since I was little. And so, as I said, I was mentoring parents of teens when I was 19. I was a summer camp counselor. I've been a nanny. I've lived with families. I'm just so immersed in families, and from a really empowered place. It doesn't feel like from an empty void. It feels like a just a deep value of mine, which sometimes can come from our voids. But nothing seems more important to me than this one human family.
Mm.
So then, I continued on and I studied therapy, and I was a therapist in private practice for a while. And my approach has always been the same. It was never very much into the diagnosing unless that was really helpful for someone. It's always about meeting the person where they are. I've been in the forest with people as they've been angry, throwing sticks. I've been in sessions with people where they don't even talk, they just draw the whole time, and they've said that it's their favorite hour of their whole week. I've had,
Oh.
just beautiful, beautiful moments of just being with what is, because from there anything is possible. That's where trust and rapport is built. And yeah, I'm just kind of lucky I made it through so many school years of what I don't even agree with a lot of what's happening in a lot of the school systems at the moment, in terms of just boxing in and not understanding what's right and good or even relevant. And so I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I had some really awesome teachers and was able to be in art classes, because I'm also an artist, which has served me greatly personally and professionally, because I believe we all are creative beings, and this can really soothe our anxiety and worry that we're all prone to.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, making it through master's programs and all of this, and always being, at least to the best I can, anchoring back into what's real and true and what worked for me. And by work, I don't mean like I'm getting anything, but working as in what what can cultivate true connection here. And
Mhm.
yeah, I landed in Maui, just a bunch of beautiful synchronicities that are a longer story that maybe I'll share one day. But the fact there's just sprinkles along my life that I can look back to now and see how it all fits, and how I did land here, which was not my goal. I wasn't trying to move to Maui, but um, got invited to be here. And whether it's by, a person or the land, or a bigger mission, I'm so grateful to be here with my feet in the ground, which I know helps me stay grounded and stay connected. And I see such beautiful experiences here with families, moms playing with their kids in waterfalls, their 12-year-old boys dunking the mom underwater, kids,
Oh.
yeah, kids playing with their siblings on the beach, entertaining themselves while dad fishes for dinner. I mean, this is the real deal.
Mm.
And there's a way to create this no matter where we are. We don't have to live on an island for that. There's definitely things that are hard about being far away as well,
Mhm.
if we want to look at it that way. But yeah, I
Yeah.
hope that explains a bit of kind of my journey and how I got here, and how much uh, how much just respect I have for parents and teens, and the true honor it is to work with them both. And actually, it's just incredible when we do show up clear for teens, with respect, with genuine care. What they reflect back is exactly this.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so true. And your
And
story is beautiful. Oh, I do. I do. And I'm so grateful to be able to say that. And, you and I have a lot of similarities with what you were saying about your background and with children. And I had someone tell me one time they thought my past life I was a teacher that came into a small town. And
yes.
then like they had the teacher vibe or whatever from a long time ago, which is just funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the also going back to the water metaphor that you used earlier and the fact that you're on an island, that's just kind of cool to me.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Well, I mean, I was born in a bathtub. I'm a Cancer next to a lake by the sea. It's just there's so much water. I paint
mhm.
oceans, like it's an ideal metaphor for me.
Yes, it's just who you are. It's wonderful. So I love what you said too about being with what is when you are working with children and their families, and I think that's such a powerful message to take in because we tend to have such resistance about what is, and we're thinking in the future, we're looking and planning and but we're not going this direction, and that direction is the better direction, and we put so much value and judgment and fear onto what is because we think we can determine what will be. And I'm just wondering like how you work with families to give them that space to allow things to be and not get so caught up on exactly where they're going. And I don't mean it in a very like let's not make any plans kind of way, because I think that's
Right.
part of our human nature, is to kind of make plans and look forward to things and build up to stuff, and not just to be floating around not with any direction or aim. But I do think that teens now are under a lot of pressure to know exactly what they're supposed to do for the rest of their life by the time they're 16, 17, 18 years old. And I think we're all experiencing or witnessing it in our teens currently. So what are some suggestions that you could offer to families who may be feeling like they're not quite sure what direction their kids are going, or they seem like they might be floating around without any direction? Like, how
Yeah.
would you get started there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much of this happening right now for so many reasons. Some, it's school is miserable because it's so not modern, updated, relevant, interesting, connected, natureful, right? There's so much there that's
Mhm.
hard for teens. So we can even use as an example if we want. There's so many examples here. We can start with this one and maybe we'll add an extra one. If your teen hates homework, hates a teacher, hates school, and you're not able for whatever reason to shift them away from that place, because that's so many people's reality, which that's a whole other conversation. There's lots of options these days, and it might be more attainable than you think. Um, but say it's that place. Okay, what is? Your teen is like, why am I even doing this? What's the point? This is so stupid. And I
Mhm.
hear this all the time. We can actually show up going, what, tell me more. What's the hardest part? Right? That's the curiosity from care. And so that's so different, and it will create a very different trajectory than if you go, well, you just have to suck it up and just, don't worry about it, or like this year's almost over. Even
Mhm.
reassurance can feel so validating. And so that's a very different experience. If we think about what that's like for a teen, the latter is, my parent does not get this. They don't know how hard this is for me. They don't see my suffering. They don't understand me or this or what I'm going through. And that's the last thing parents want. But in your efforts to make it better, and in your fear of, oh God, they're never going to graduate and sleep on my couch till they're 40, which happens in the blink of an eye, right? That fear, or something horrible is going to happen. That's what ends up being translated. And so there's the barrier. And so if we want to bridge, that's when we say, oh my gosh, sounds like there's a bunch of crap happening, or hard stuff, or whatever language is appropriate, whatever type, whatever feels right for you. What's the hardest part? What's going on? I'm listening. And then listen, truly listen, not to fix, not to change. If you're ever like, what should I do? Listen more. Keep listening.
Mhm.
And if you need some support with, wait, what is listening? Get that support, right? Find that person that can teach you, show you, start with yourself, all whatever you need to do, because there's so much more magic often in wisdom in listening than in your amazing wisdom of decades of living. We can't download that into our teens. There's a reason it happens over years and years.
Yes,
And
right.
so, them finding their way, them making it through challenge is what's going to build their resilience and skill set. But they can't do it alone. And they also don't need us to fix it. They need us to just walk them through as like, oh, yeah, I'd probably feel that way too. Oh, I wonder what would make it, less horrible. Is there anything you can think of? Or I'm with you every step of the way. This sucks. Even as
Mhm.
simple, this sucks can be so much more powerful than any other words.
Mhm. Yeah, and the whole idea of just get over it, I had to do it, you can do it too, that sort of thought process, which does nothing but shuts them down and makes them go, okay, well, they're obviously don't care or not listening and can't see it my way at all.
Right.
Um, which is why we have sometimes those generational gaps, because
Yeah.
what we experienced is different than what our kids are experiencing. It just
Yeah,
is.
the whole world is different, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
even if it were true that that was a great approach and it worked wonders and it was the best approach, it's still a different world. And the
Mhm.
thing is, teens already know that they have to suck it up. They're so aware.
Yeah, right.
They're so aware that's what's hard, and they're doing it alone. And meanwhile, like you were alluding to, there's so much pressure. It's like this kid's going to Yale and this kid knows what they want to do. And they're watching all the highlights on Instagram or in school and people being celebrated for knowing everything about their future. And some kids are not wired that way. Some kids
Mhm.
need to go have 2 years in nature or be learning under a mentor about running a business or learning how to day trade or whatever, right? There's so many things we can do and master and practice and gain skills. And unfortunately, most schools don't offer a whole lot of relevant options at the moment. And
Right.
it's really sad because we're seeing, of course, not only collaboration be squashed, but even competitive nature, which can be good too. I mean, there's obviously
Mhm.
unhealthy versions of that. Um, and creativity and just I want to like some teens I know what they want to do so deeply in their bones and they've just had to wait.
Yeah.
They haven't actually had any time to focus on their dreams. And if we think about that, how sad is that that there's these dreams that have to wait and thank goodness they're going to be strong enough to bubble up, but we wonder why some teens by 18 are just exhausted and like almost apathetic.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, like, I have to do this some more. I have to do somebody else's checklist and jump through these hoops in order to finally get to where I wanna be. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's for sure that yeah, that definitely is going on. You were bringing this up flows beautifully into the next thing I was gonna talk to you about, which was the post or the reel that you made, a few days ago, maybe it's been a week or so, that your teens do not need good grades or good college to have a good life, that there are lots of versions of a good life. And I really want to hammer this point home. um,
Let's.
yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it. So I will say, and I've written about this and shared about this, that, I'm a college graduate. I was the first person in my family to go to college, which was highly celebrated. I was very excited about it. And I say with the first person as in like cousins, aunts, uncles,
Mm,
a long line. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And I loved it. And I was a studious kid. I always was reading, and my brother nicknamed me Book. Um, and so for me, college was like, it was something I wanted to do and I enjoyed it.
yeah.
So for somebody like me who is now typing and writing and saying, stop pushing college on everybody, seems almost like, why would you be doing that? Are you a hypocrite? No. What I'm seeing is that we culturally shifted this conversation to be, if no college, then not success. And I know people who never went to college who are making an amazing living, who are living an amazing life, who have a beach house and a house here. And, so it's like, and I'm not saying that those are your, parameters for success. They are happy people,
Right.
but it's also the idea that if you don't do college, then your life really won't amount to much. And I think
Yeah,
that is such a damaging, dangerous message. And I also feel like
it
that's
is.
why we see a lot of kids just floating around not knowing what direction to go, because they think to themselves, well, I'm not smart enough to get into college, or I'm not rich enough to get into college, or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's talk about it. So, what have you seen, and what would you offer up to families to take into consideration?
Well, I'm right there with you. I spent a fortune. I went to college for 7 years. And and it was expected. I grew up on the East Coast. It's like everyone does this no matter if you have money or not, and that's what you do. There's this one way. It's interesting just how culture can really just it's just very strong and
Mhm.
it can be quite strong, and I do think we're at this dangerous place now, as you said, or tricky place where teens are feeling not good enough, not smart
Mhm.
enough. And the reality is truly we are born enough. We are, and we're gonna, it doesn't mean we're not growing, it doesn't mean we're not building skills, it doesn't mean there's not stuff to learn. But oh my gosh, if we can take anything from our history, ancestors, truth of this world, is that we come here with a gift. And it doesn't mean your gift means you're famous and rich. This isn't what we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, sure, and that's great. And the gifts come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all important because we all reflect a different facet of this crystal. And so, um, I felt the pressure big, and it's nothing compared to I think what teens are feeling now. And it's weird at the same time. It's strange because while that's happening, this is also the most opportune time to do things a
Mhm.
different way, right?
Right? Yeah.
There's free classes at Harvard online now. What? I mean,
Mhm.
there's a truth, at least what I think is bubbling up, that there's going to be a million ways to be educated. It's going to include paying for college. It's going to include college for free. It's going to include auditing a college or taking classes online. It's going to include education unrelated to college, out in the world on an adventure with a mentor. You want to be a survivalist and start a YouTube channel? Go for it. You want to be a
Mhm.
full-time artist? Awesome. You want to be a doctor? Great, right? There's so many avenues, and we are stuck in this space, which it's just ironic because it's actually never been less true that you need good grades for a good life. And
Mm-hmm.
so I believe this is why we're seeing kids feel like they're wrong for being like having their big emotions, which again, if we understood teens and the teen brain, we would know is typical, of course, within reason. Doesn't mean it doesn't need support and attention, but this is part of it. And then also even substance use. If we look at the little amount of sleep teens are getting, the messages they're getting told at school, and then wonder why they're kind of slipping into other realms in maybe typical teen ways, trying it here and there, and others excessive ways. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, no wonder this is happening. And so even it's just like with the school piece, if there's some of that happening in your world, what's going on underneath it all? Why, what's the reason here? What's the root? If we want to understand the fruits, as in what's on our plate right now in front of us, we really do have to look at the roots.
And the
What's making
environment.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because the
Yeah,
environment for sure impacts how people show up or not show up. And, the whole idea of
exactly.
substance use being a sort of expected time of teen years is, I think, a result of the environments because, we know that sleep deprivation can be just as bad as drunk driving. People get in accidents all the time
Absolutely.
because they are sleep deprived. And here we are at the time of their lives where they need the most sleep. We're saying ignore sleep,
Yep.
get up. You got class to be
Yep.
to, you have books to read, you have assignments to turn in. Sleep, you can do that another time. And I'm like, that is some of the most important thing that we could be teaching our kids from the get go is to honor their bodies and make
Yeah.
sure that they're sleeping and resting. So yeah,
Absolutely. And if this is what's beyond, if this is my teen years, and then, oh, is this college? Oh, and this is being an adult in the world. Like, I don't
hmm
like it, is what a lot of teens are like, no, thank you, actually. Like, that doesn't feel like living. That doesn't feel balanced. And they're telling us, and they're not gonna always say it with their words, but we're seeing it in a lot of other ways. This is not working. This is not
right.
sustainable. And this is not what's most important. And I also think that there's even this connection to nature that we want, and it can sometimes become a substance issue, right? If we look at even culturally, we used to kind of work with nature differently and together in community. And now there's this big separation. And we are always going to want to be
Yeah.
connected to nature in whatever way lands and makes sense with our, unique personality and our environment. And so I even look to that sometimes like, oh, there might be this lack of connection to source, to nature, to community. And sometimes for some teens, I don't know, smoking a joint might satisfy temporarily those needs. And once we see it in these lenses and with this light, and not that I'm
hmm
promoting, you know, substance, but it's like I'm talking about understanding why these behaviors are happening. Why are they missing curfew? Why are they unable to complete their tasks? Why might they be experimenting at all or to various degrees? What's really going on here, and how can I develop a relationship where actually we can talk
Yeah.
about this stuff without judgment, without fear, and not to banish judgment and fear, right? There's even with these things we say aren't helpful in our relationships, they're kind of natural and they are going to come up. So it's like, of course I'm going to be scared that my teen's going to get in trouble or be in unsafe situations, and that makes sense. And how can I actually prepare
Mm.
them? How can I guide them? How can I show up in a way that they know they can always call or ask anything? And it takes us being uncomfortable and talking about this stuff, and keeping these doors open, because that's not our team's job.
Well, I hear the rooster.
There it was. There's my neighbor. We might hear a cow.
That's awesome because it came at right at the right time. It's like, yes, I
Yeah,
second that message.
right. Yes, it's the rooster's medicine is like, wake up, wake up, wake up, everyone.
Oh gosh. Well, I know we're kind of getting close to our time, but I feel like it's so important to touch on if you have a minute on the
I
social.
have many
Okay, good,
minutes.
good. On the social media side of things, because that is the reality, and that's how kids communicate, and that's how they get their news and information about the world. And so, what has been either your
Mm.
experience and or your opinion or insight on how to have those conversations with our teens about social media use and what to think about and what to look out for.
Mm,
And, maybe even as parents, how to utilize it yourself to communicate with your teen, because I have found that
yeah.
to be an amazingly fun way to communicate with my teens because we love sharing reels with each other and Snapchat and all that
Mm,
stuff. So we use the tools of the time to interact with each
yeah.
other, and it's fun, and I mean we get a good kick out of it. But I know that there's some concerns as well, and it's a very real issue in some families. So what's some
Sure.
insight you can provide there?
Yeah, I'm with you, and it is everything, right? It's bringing me back to even the reality that at one point when calculators were new, there were protests for
Oh,
calculators. Like
wow.
we shouldn't have calculators, right? And it's not exactly the same because of course social media it allows anyone to communicate with anyone
Mm-hmm.
basically about anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where it's completely different, right? It's a tool just like a calculator. However, its expansiveness can be overwhelming. And if we look at kind of what the teen brain is capable of, it really depends. 12, 13 is very different than 18, 19, 20, 21.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's knowing your kid, it's knowing yourself, and it's also preparing them. Like, do we already have a solid enough relationship where we can work through this stuff? And also what kinds of parameters and edges to that river do I want to kind of have up in place? And yeah, are we talking about the hard stuff from illicit videos, sexual in nature? If someone you don't know writes to you, if there's people bullying someone in a group chat, like, right, the hard stuff that we don't even want to look at because it's so
Yeah.
big and yuck and awful. And just, are we already talking about that stuff? Have I prepared my kid for this? And what kinds of parameters do I want to put up based on my kid, their maturity level, our family values, etc.? And so with all that in mind, I've seen everything with the hundreds of teens in my life, everything from social media and internet has taken over their life and they live in like a digital reality that's not connected to nature really
Mm.
at much, if at all. And I've seen teens be creators and even make income
Mhm.
with this tool and have awesome relationships with their parents. And so it's like the vastness is mind boggling and heart boggling. And so these are some things to consider, right? And if you haven't given your kid access to a phone or social media, being very intentional about step by step, the next best thing, what can we handle right now, what's appropriate, and easing our way into it sometimes, and really making sure you have that solid foundation of prepping them. And sometimes this can even be family group chats where they actually learn at age 10 how to have appropriate conversations with safe people
Mm.
as a great place to start. Or 12 or 6, whatever makes sense for your family. This is a way that can be a good start. And then, yeah, what's the reason? Do they need a phone or social media to be in touch with their friends, to be in touch with you for safety and tracking? But I'm very much safety, wellness before anything, because I really, that's, it's like, have you slept? Do you have nutrition? Are
Right.
you feeling connected in your relationships? Like all of this, and then let's grow from there. And the reality is, as you said, a lot of their connections with friends in their social realm, which we know is age appropriate and important for teens, is happening online.
Mhm.
And so, how can we support that while feeling comfortable and clear that our kid is in a good place with it? They're going to come to us with questions. We're checking in, um, and that it feels solid. And there are ways to do that, whether it's parameters in place, or you check their phone from time to time, which is of course controversial. There's a lot of opinions on that. This is all very nuanced with your family. But I think there's something really special about the teen years where it's like you can be a producer instead of a consumer.
Mhm.
You can be a creator instead of a consumer, if that's what you're into, right? I've got some teens that have YouTube channels, um, and there's a way to do that in a balanced way too, that not only is fun but generates income and freedom. And for some teens, that's what they want.
Mhm.
For other teens, not at all. Some teens aren't even into social media, and they're like, I just want to
Yeah.
garden, right? Or go on adventures and like do and jump off cliffs into the ocean or whatever, right?
Mhm.
There's so many versions of tea and so many flavors. And yeah, these are just some thoughts, but I've seen every angle of it. And if the angles that haven't been healthy or balanced are usually a blend of lack of connection, lack of preparation, lack of prepare and understanding, and
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. No, those are great. I'm glad you bottom line that, because I found that to be the case too. And something I wrote a while back was about sort of like internet addiction and social media addiction. And to me, those are symptoms of an underlying problem, um, which generally goes
Which could be,
which generally
yeah,
goes back to what's happening under the hood there. It doesn't mean
yes,
because somebody's actually on the internet that being on the internet itself is going to cause the addiction, but there is a question about, like, let's look at the individual and the circumstances. And I also like how you said something about the family, because I do believe we need to think about it in terms of, it's not a blanket statement that we apply to every kid and every family. Every family's different for a
mhm,
reason, and so they need to figure out the culture that works for them within their family. And
yeah.
then, but as a sort of a broad statement, we can look at, it's important to look at the individuals and have that communication and that conversation and keep it open.
Yeah, what's coming up now, it seems really important. I might have skipped over the dopamine, right? If they're
Mhm.
lacking joy
Mhm.
in life, if it's boring and school sucks and all this stuff, oh, you bet they're going to want to be wherever the dopamine is, right?
Yes,
Like,
for sure.
of course, especially during the teen years. So knowing the teen brain, educating them even about what's happening inside their head. A lot of teens want to know what's going on up there, what's going on inside of me, and then also, can we please raise critical thinkers? Oh my gosh. I mean, it's never been more important, right?
Yeah.
With what's being fed and uh, filtered.
Mhm.
um, can we look to, can we please be critical thinkers ourselves and raise them and make this important again? Because it's never been more critical to critically think and to look at who's sharing this, why might they be sharing it, what are the roots of this, who's benefiting from this, and also, like, oh, I'm going to be fed more, like, understanding algorithm,
Mhm.
understanding this realm. And it takes actually parents understanding what's happening and modeling this, to really support teens in seeing this. Because how cool would that be to know that? I mean, if we think back to our teen years, if someone was talking to us about what was actually going on in our bodies and brains, and then how to look at something like, whether it's an article we're reading or a video we're watching, like, what's really, what is this?
Mhm.
What's happening here?
Mhm. Well, and I've found too, when I give my kids information that I've learned, and I'll say, I learned this, I'm just sharing it with you. They love it because they're like, "I don't wanna be
Yeah.
manipulated. I don't like somebody to hoodwink me." And so when you
Yep.
tell them, "Yep, well, that algorithm's after you," it's like they
Yeah.
go, "Wait a minute," and it's like
Yeah.
they want to be, enlightened and aware, and they might not go after the information in the same way a parent would, but
Right.
if we go after it and then we find out something, we can always share it. Just the same way I would share, a favorite recipe with somebody that loves to cook, or,
Hmm.
somebody
Yeah.
that enjoys a particular type of book. It's a sharing. It's not you
Yeah.
have to do this. It's more of a, hey,
No.
here's this information. You might find it interesting. I thought about you.
Yeah.
So
I love
yeah,
that.
it's definitely been it's a helpful way to get the conversation started, and also just all inviting friends in too. I think that's another important piece with
Mm.
the teen years, is ensuring that the kids know that their friends are welcome here, or in
Yes.
their spaces, and that it's a safe and comfortable environment for them to be. Um, so that
Mm.
generates that sense of connection, not only with your kids, but their friends and the people that they like, that you might not
Oh,
know otherwise. And so it's always fun too to be like, so what about that friendship do you enjoy? Or what about that person,
yes.
and kind of getting curious that way
Yes.
too. Cause then you're like, oh, I see that. I can understand that now.
Those are some of my favorite questions, and Rooster, like, went 3 times there with the, like, invite their friends, and so there's a wake up and a real importance there, and those are yeah, even if it's a relationship that you're like, "I don't know if I like this kid, or I don't know if this is a healthy one," asking them, "What do you like about it?
Mm-hmm.
What are you noticing?" Right? This is the most opportune time for them to tap into their inner knowing, and not, it doesn't mean, that there's not room for improvement,
Sure.
but this is how we can gain skills in that area. This is how they can gain skills in that area, by the adults, the parents asking. these kinds of questions. What are you noticing? What is it like for you? What do you love about that friendship? What's hard about that friendship?
Yeah, they're so good. And it's just amazing how those questions can just open up things in their minds that they hadn't thought about before, or it
Yeah.
gives them a chance to really sit with something a little longer, even if they don't have the answers, or not answers, but a way to
Yes.
respond at that moment. It's still marinating in there, and it's something that they can then kind of look out for down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we look at it's like, I mean, reflective listening, active listening, or motivational interviewing,
Hmm.
right? It's like that seed gets
Yeah,
planted.
yeah. Those seeds are important to plant, that's for sure.
Mhm, mhm, they are.
Well, I want to, before we wrap up, make sure everybody knows where to find you, and also any particular resources or favorite books or anything else that you might want to offer for families to take into consideration that's specific to the teen years. I know you mentioned Eric Erickson earlier,
Yeah.
but anything related to like the teen development, like something specific that's going on in those years that you
Yeah.
want to share, and also where people can find you.
You can find me at Kirsten Cobabe or kirstencobabe.com. And then, yeah, for resources, Teen 2.0 is a great book. It's
Mm.
thick. It's
Mhm.
thick, but it's good. It's juicy. And you can flip around. It's not like, you don't have to read it cover to cover unless you want to, and do if you want to, because it's fabulous. There's a lot of great info in there that puts it all into perspective. And I know that there's some great podcasts right now with, for example, Dr. Becky Goodenside has a great podcast. If someone just needs a little download of something, um,
Can
that's another just, yeah.
can you spell her last name? Did you say Good Inside?
Her whole account is called Good Inside, like good
Oh,
inside.
I know
And
exactly who you're talking about. Yes.
you know who I'm
Gotcha. Yep,
talking about.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
She has just opened up a teen realm, which can be really supportive for people. I'll also have in the near future a parenting group and my own membership
Great.
that focuses entirely on tweens and teens and will be a more accessible potentially for some people. And my one-on-ones are less accessible, and just more scarce. So
Right.
but the teen group for parents is coming up, and hopefully more courses will be available too, so people can get some downloads if you don't, depending on your resources, time, and all of that. So I'm trying to really cover all the bases, and offer all the gems I have from the hundreds and hundreds of teens over 25 years at this point. So
Mhm.
that's my whole goal and mission always. And then, yeah, actually, some of my favorite parenting books aren't even parenting books. One of them's Eckhart's work, A New Earth. And I'm actually in the midst of The Bonds That Make Us Free. It's not a parenting book, but it's very beautiful. Um, and if someone needs just a quick, you can edit whatever you want out of this, by the way. Um, this
No,
is a lot.
I love all
And
these. I'm writing. I've
okay.
never heard of the bonds that make us free, so I'm like, oh, what is that one?
I
I have to
think
put that one in there.
I'm pretty sure it's connected to Arbinger Institute, so it's a lot of inside the box and outside the box stuff, which can be
Okay.
really supportive for any of our relationships. And The Untethered Soul is just a good
Oh, that's
go-to
a
read
great
every
one.
year.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
So, lots of resources you're welcome to share or not share, however many of those you want. But I'm really excited for what is coming probably this summer in my realm, which again, it's just tweens and teens, parents of tweens and teens. This also will include raising like into the move into young adult. So if your teen is 18, 19, 20, that's still an important time to be engaged in these ways and empowering ways. And so I'm stretching it into that. You might have an adult who's still at home or out in the world, and that is going to be part of the membership and parenting group as well. So I'm very excited for that.
Do you work directly with adults, young adults online?
I do. Yeah, I work with teens, tweens, their parents, and then young adults as well. And I also offer one 30-minute call per family for free.
And all your wonderful free stuff too on Instagram. I mean, there's plenty that people can spend time learning through there.
Yes, more to come. more to come and a book and all the things.
I can't wait to see it all. And even like I'm just looking at your Instagram page right now. I'm like, even look at all those beautiful blues, those beautiful watery blues.
Water.
Water,
Water
there it
is
is
one of
again.
my teachers.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful. There's so many good golden nuggets that you shared, and I cannot wait to get it out into the world.
Thank you so much for having me. I love connecting with you, and I hope to connect again very soon. And I'm just grateful and honored to be here.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about guests on the podcast and to stay up to date on how they are showing up to make the world a better place for children and families, please check the show notes. To become a part of the great educational awakening and to keep up with my latest writings, offerings, and workshops, be sure you're signed up for my Substack newsletter. You can also follow along on social media at Let 'em Go Barefoot. That's LETEMGO Barefoot. If you are new to homeschooling, new to unschooling, or are simply unschooling curious but not sure where to start, we now have a beautiful 43-page downloadable guide that walks you through the how and why of self-directed education and child-led learning, as well as responses to common questions and concerns around academics, motivation, college, community, and more. You can find a link to purchase your copy in the show notes. Thank you so much for your support. As always, stay curious, stay connected, and stay aware. Until next time.